Maria stepped into the quiet hotel room just as the storm outside softened, and something in the air felt strangely hollow, like someone had left in a hurry. She bent to fix the sheets when a forgotten wallet slipped from the pillow's edge and landed with a dull thud. She meant only to check the ID, but as she opened it, a small folded paper slid out and dropped to the floor. Her heart tightened before she even knew why. What would you do if a simple mistake suddenly felt dangerous? She reached for the note, hands trembling, the light flickering above her as if the room itself was warning her to stop. When she unfolded it, she felt something colder than fear move through her chest, and for a moment she swore she heard a faint whisper in the hall calling her name. Maria stood frozen for a long moment before forcing herself to breathe again, the strange heaviness in the room clinging to her skin like cold dust. She tucked the note back into her palm, unsure why her heart was pounding so fast when she still didn't fully understand what she had seen. Sometimes fear arrives before meaning, and she felt that truth press into her ribs. She took one slow step toward the window, trying to steady her thoughts. But every sound in the room felt sharper, louder. What if this wasn't just a forgotten wallet? What if someone was in trouble? The question settled inside her like a stone as the storm thinned to a soft, uneasy drip. Maria sank onto the edge of the bed, the springs creaking louder than they should have, as if the room wanted to remind her she wasn't supposed to be here. She opened the note again, slower this time, letting her eyes adjust to the small, uneven handwriting. The words still didn't make sense, but the feeling they carried did. A warning, desperate, and rushed. Her fingers tightened around the edges as a chill crawled along her spine. She thought of the guest who stayed here, the hurried checkout, the silence he left behind. She whispered a quiet promise to herself that she would not ignore this, even if she didn't yet know what it meant. The air felt heavier the longer Maria stayed, as if the room held its own quiet memory of what had happened here. She stood, pacing slowly, trying to think clearly, while the unsettling words from the note echoed in her mind. She wondered what kind of man left something like that behind and why he walked out without looking back. Her pulse thudded in her ears, but beneath the fear grew a sharper instinct. Something was wrong, and someone needed help. She glanced at the door, imagining the steps of the man who had slept here, and the unease deepened. Maria felt the moment shift inside her, turning fear into resolve. She couldn't pretend she hadn't seen the note, couldn't return the wallet and act like none of this was real. She walked toward the desk, telling herself she would call the front office, report the room, do something. The storm had softened outside, but the silence in the room grew sharper, as though waiting for her choice. She reached for the phone, her fingers trembling but purposeful. Whatever she had stumbled into, she knew she couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. Maria spent her lunch break hidden in a tiny corner of the staff room. The note unfolded on her knees as she searched the hotel system for the name on the wallet. Her hands still shook, but now the fear, mixed with something sharper, a need to understand. She typed the guest's name, and felt her stomach twist when more details appeared than she expected. His checkout time, the credit card on file, the room he changed from at the last minute. Every detail felt like another piece of a puzzle she never meant to touch. She whispered the name to herself, testing the weight of it, wondering why it felt wrong. The hum of the vending machine filled the silence as she leaned closer to the screen, heart pounding as if she were trespassing into someone's hidden life. Maria stared at the guest record, tracing each detail with her eyes as unease gathered like a storm behind her ribs. Nothing in the file explained the strange message on the note, yet every line made her feel heavier. The rushed checkout, the incomplete home address, the emergency contact listed but never answered. She wondered who Jacob was, the name mentioned on the note, and why it felt written in fear. She leaned back, trying to steady her breath, but the questions kept coming, sharper now. Why hide a note instead of asking for help? Why leave it behind at all? Maria felt a chill settle into her spine as she realized she was stepping deeper into something dangerous without even meaning to. The longer Maria stared at the name Jacob, the more her chest tightened. She remembered the handwriting on the note, uneven and shaky, as if written in fear. She pictured a child somewhere waiting for help that never came. The thought made her stand abruptly, the chair scraping loudly behind her. She paced the small room, trying to make sense of the feeling rising in her chest. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe it was nothing. But her instincts refused to quiet. She turned back to the computer, drawn again to the file, as though the answer might appear if she looked long enough. Something about Ethan Cole didn't fit. And that single fact shook her more than she wanted to admit. Maria couldn't shake the sense that she needed more. The note, the file, the rushed checkout. It all pointed to something she didn't yet understand. She returned to the computer and searched the security logs, unsure if she was crossing a line but unable to stop herself. When she saw the time stamp of Ethan leaving, a prickling doubt hit her. It was earlier than he reported, almost an hour off. She swallowed hard, realizing he hadn't checked out properly at all. He had slipped away. The truth settled over her slowly, like a heavy curtain falling. Whatever he was running from, he didn't want anyone to see. Maria stepped back from the desk as her thoughts collided into a single truth. This wasn't a mistake or a forgotten wallet. Someone left a hidden message because they were scared, and Ethan didn't want anyone to see it. She clutched the note tightly, feeling its edges bite into her palm. Fear rose in her chest again, but now it pushed her forward instead of holding her still. She had to return the wallet, had to look him in the eyes and see what kind of man walked away from a message like that. The decision felt dangerous, but she knew she couldn't turn away now. Not when the silence around her felt so wrong. Maria stood outside the hotel lobby, the wallet growing heavier in her hand the longer she waited. She had asked the receptionist if Ethan had returned for anything, and when they said yes, that he was on his way down, her breath caught. Every instinct inside her pulled tight. She kept replaying the note, the strange message, the fear in the handwriting. When the elevator dinged, her heart jumped as though someone had pressed it from inside. She wondered what kind of face she would see, what kind of man would leave a warning behind. The lobby felt too bright, too quiet, as if the room knew something she didn't. She tightened her grip and told herself she needed to see the truth for herself. Ethan stepped from the elevator with a controlled calm that made Maria's skin tighten. His eyes scanned the lobby before landing on her, and something about his smile felt like it had been practiced. She lifted the wallet slightly, but the words stuck in her throat. For a moment, they simply stood facing each other, the quiet stretching too long. He thanked her in a low, even tone, but she heard something underneath it, a tightness, a pressure. She watched his hand reach for the wallet and felt her pulse quicken. She thought of the note, the shaking handwriting, the name Jacob. Her mind raced as she tried to read the truth in his face. As Ethan took the wallet, Maria watched his fingers tighten around it too quickly, too forcefully, as though afraid she might pull it back. Her breath caught when he asked if she had opened it. His voice was calm, but the edge beneath it made her stomach twist. She answered honestly, saying only that she needed to find his name. His expression barely shifted, but his jaw tightened enough for her to see. She felt the moment turn cold, the lobby sounds fading into a distant blur. She wondered if he could see her fear, if he knew she sensed something was wrong. Ethan thanked her again, but his voice felt wrong. When he stepped closer, Maria felt a cold ripple run down her spine. He asked if she had found anything else, the words slow and heavy, and she struggled to keep her breathing steady. She shook her head, and for a moment, the silence between them felt like a test. He nodded, but something in his eyes sharpened, a flicker she couldn't name. She stepped back, needing distance, needing space to think. The doors behind him slid open as if offering her an escape, but she held her ground, watching him too carefully to look away. When Ethan finally turned away, Maria felt her knees weaken with relief she didn't trust. She watched him walk toward the revolving doors, his posture too stiff, too controlled. Something inside her whispered that she had just spoken to a man hiding something dangerous. As he stepped outside into the thinning rain, she caught sight of him glancing around as though checking for someone. The unease inside her deepened, curling into certainty. She knew then that she couldn't let this end here. She needed answers, needed truth. And something told her his silence was louder than any words he could have said. Maria walked to the small security office with her heart pounding hard enough to drown out her footsteps. She had tried to calm herself, to tell her mind she was overreacting, but Ethan's tight stare still echoed inside her like a warning. She knew she couldn't stay quiet. When she stepped inside and saw Officer Lena Ward speaking with hotel management, something inside her steadied. This was her moment. She clutched the note in her hand, feeling its trembling edges, and told herself she would speak even if her voice shook. The truth needed air, and she could no longer keep it trapped inside her chest. Officer Ward turned toward Maria with a calm, assessing look that made Maria straighten instinctively. She explained everything she could without her voice breaking. The wallet, the note, Ethan's reaction. Ward listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable but focused. When Maria handed her the note, the officer studied it carefully. And Maria saw the faint shift in her eyes, a tightening that told her this was real, that her fear wasn't imagined. She felt both relief and dread mix inside her like a fast-moving tide. Officer Ward asked Maria to walk her through everything again, slower this time. Maria did her best, describing each moment exactly as she remembered it. As she spoke, Ward's attention never wavered. She asked sharp questions, the kind that sliced straight to the point. Maria realized the officer was piecing something together, something bigger than she could see. When Ward asked her to describe Ethan, Maria felt a nervous knot twist in her throat, but she forced herself to answer. The officer nodded once, her expression darkening thoughtfully, as though connecting threads Maria didn't yet understand. By the time Maria finished explaining, the weight of everything settled over the room like thick fog. Officer Ward stood and walked to the monitors, replaying footage of Ethan leaving the hotel. Maria watched the officer's shoulders stiffen as she paused on a frame where he glanced back over his shoulder. That same cold caution in his eyes. Ward murmured that something wasn't right. Hearing that from someone trained to see danger made Maria's pulse spike. She felt the world tilt a little as the truth became undeniable. Officer Ward finally turned back to Maria, her expression firm and steady, the kind that told Maria this was no longer a simple report. Ward said she needed the wallet, the note, and every detail. Maria remembered. She warned that things might move quickly, and that Maria had to be ready to tell the full truth, no matter how unsettling. Maria felt fear rise again, but this time it sharpened into courage. She nodded, clutching her hands together to keep them from shaking. Whatever came next, she knew she had done the right thing. And now, there was no turning back. The station felt colder than Maria expected, its quiet halls stretching out like a place built for hard truths. Officer Ward walked beside her, steady and calm, guiding her past desks covered in case files until they reached a small interview room. Maria sat down, her hands clasped so tightly. They ached, but she forced herself to breathe. Ward brought in a folder, thicker than it should have been, and laid it on the table. When she opened it, Maria saw photos she didn't understand at first. Then she saw the boy, Jacob, the same name from the note. The world narrowed to the image of a thin child with tired eyes. Ward said they'd been looking for him for weeks. Maria felt her heart drop as the truth finally took shape. The officer slid the file closer to Maria, her tone low and steady as she explained that Jacob had been reported missing by a relative. Ethan had last been seen with him, but never explained where the boy went. Maria listened with growing dread as the pieces aligned with the sharpness of a snapped puzzle. The handwriting on the note, the rushed checkout, the fear. It all pointed to one terrible truth. Jacob had tried to reach someone, and the message had landed in her hands. Her throat tightened, and for the first time she whispered the boy's name out loud, feeling its weight settle deep inside her. Ward asked Maria to tell her everything one more time, every detail of Ethan's behavior, every word he said. Maria repeated it carefully, hearing her own voice tremble, but never stop. She told the officer how Ethan grabbed the wallet too fast, how his smile never reached his eyes, how something in him felt wrong. Ward listened with a tightening jaw, her gaze fixed and thoughtful. When Maria mentioned the note again, Ward nodded slowly, saying it matched the tone of someone trying to warn, not escape. Maria realized then that the boy hadn't been running from danger. He had been trying to point to it. After Maria finished, Officer Ward stood and said she needed to check something. She returned minutes later with an investigator who carried another set of photos, this time of places. A motel, a parking lot, a stretch of road. Maria recognized the motel instantly. It was only a few blocks from the hotel. The investigator explained that Ethan had been spotted there before Jacob went missing. The room felt smaller as the truth closed in. Jacob hadn't disappeared by accident. Maria felt a deep, aching worry for a boy she had never met, as though he were calling to her through the note. Ward looked Maria in the eyes and told her gently but firmly that this was now a critical case. Ethan wasn't just suspicious. He was connected to a missing child who might still be out there. Maria felt her breath catch as the reality settled. She had stepped into something far bigger than she imagined, but she also realized something else. She was the only person who had found the note, the only one who had witnessed Ethan's strange behavior. Her fear didn't vanish, but it shifted into something steadier. She nodded, her voice quiet but certain as she offered to help in any way she could. Maria rode in the back of the patrol car, gripping the seat as the city blurred past the windows. Officer Ward had acted fast, gathering a small team and heading straight toward the motel seen in the photos. Every second made Mariah's nerves twist tighter. She kept thinking about Jacob, imagining a scared child waiting for someone to notice he was missing. As the car pulled into the lot, a cold quiet hung over everything. Ward told her to stay behind her, but Maria's heart was already racing ahead, afraid of what they might find and even more afraid of what they might not. Ward signaled her team forward, knocking hard on the door as another officer moved to the side window. Maria stood back, hugging her arms as the moments stretched sharp and brittle. When no one answered, Ward knocked again. Louder. The silence felt wrong. Too still. Too expectant. Maria felt a chill crawl up her spine. Then a shadow flickered behind the curtains, quick and uncertain. Ward drew a breath and moved her hand to the door handle. Maria's pulse pounded in her ears as she silently prayed the boy was inside and safe. The door swung open so suddenly, Maria flinched. Ethan stood there, pale and tense, his eyes darting between the officers. Gone was the practiced smile. Instead, he looked cornered, like an animal caught between flight and attack. Ward asked where Jacob was, her voice steady and direct. Ethan's jaw tightened, and for a moment he said nothing. Maria stepped forward before she could stop herself, the boy's name trembling on her lips. Ethan's gaze snapped to her, and something dark flickered in his expression. The room felt like it held its breath. Ward stepped closer, her voice firm as she ordered Ethan to move aside. When he hesitated, the tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. The officers pushed past him, and Ethan stumbled back, anger flashing across his face. Maria's breath caught as she followed Ward inside. The room was small and dim, blankets piled on the floor, and in the corner she saw a small shape. Jacob. He looked smaller than she imagined, sitting with his knees pulled close, eyes wide and frightened. Relief and heartbreak washed over her at once. Ward knelt beside Jacob, speaking softly, and the boy finally lifted his head. When Maria stepped closer, his eyes met hers, and something in them eased, just a little. She told him he was safe now, her voice trembling with emotion she couldn't hide. Behind them, Ethan shouted that they didn't understand, but the officers moved in quickly, pinning his arms as he struggled. The boy flinched at the noise, and Maria instinctively reached out, offering her hand. Slowly, Jacob reached back. In that small, fragile moment, the weight of the truth settled. She had found him in time. Morning light spilled into the station as Maria sat beside Jacob, watching him sip warm cocoa with both hands wrapped around the cup. The night had been long, filled with questions and reports, but now there was a calm she hadn't felt in days. Jacob stayed close to her, as if afraid she might disappear if he blinked. Officer Ward moved in and out of the room, steady and reassuring, guiding social workers and detectives with quiet authority. Maria felt a soft ache in her chest as she looked at the boy, realizing how deeply she wanted him to feel safe again. What started as a simple found wallet had become something that changed them both forever. Officer Ward returned with news that Jacob's relatives were on their way, safe and ready to take him home. Maria felt a wave of relief, but also a bittersweet pull she couldn't hide. The boy had barely spoken since they found him, but he stayed close, as if her presence made the world a little less frightening. Ward thanked Maria directly, her voice steady but warmer than before. She said plainly that without Maria, Jacob might never have been found. The words sank deep, filling Maria with a quiet pride she wasn't used to feeling. When Jacob's relatives arrived, a woman with tired eyes and a man with worry still clinging to his face, Jacob hesitated before walking toward them. But first he turned back to Maria. His small hand reached for hers, and she knelt so they were eye level. He whispered a quiet thank you, barely audible, but strong enough to fill her with emotion that tightened her throat. She told him to be brave, that he was safe now. Watching him walk into their arms felt like watching a page turn, closing one chapter and opening another. After Jacob left with his family, the room grew quieter, in a way Maria wasn't prepared for. She stepped outside the station, breathing in the crisp morning air, feeling the world settle around her. Everything looked the same. The street, the passing cars, the rising sun. But something inside her had shifted. She thought of the note that had slipped from the wallet, the message meant for someone who cared enough to listen. She realized she had been that someone. And for the first time in a long while, she felt the strength of knowing her choices mattered. Maria walked slowly toward the bus stop, replaying the past day in her mind. She thought of how small choices become turning points, how courage sometimes starts with a trembling hand picking up a piece of paper. The fear she once felt had transformed into something steadier, something she could carry without shaking. As the bus approached, she looked back at the station one last time and felt a quiet, powerful truth settle inside her. Sometimes saving someone else saves a part of you, too. And she knew she would never forget the boy who proved that.